think we're live.
Oh, we're live.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. Pauline Wray here from the Fintech Control Tower Boston Consulting Group. Hi, Sobs.
Hi, good morning. It's a good day in Singapore.
Sunny Singapore. So just wanted to start, Sopnendu, before we start with the numbers and we go to the next slide. Just wanted to remind everybody, just to bring everybody into talk a little bit about Singapore very briefly. Since 2015, the focus on fintech by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the MAS, has really positioned us as a global fintech hub. By implementing initiatives to enable innovation, and I think that's something that's extremely important to talk about as we start. Tyler, can I ask you to go to the next page? So here we just wanted to share some numbers, really extraordinary. I think with the backdrop of what's happening.
Has the pace shifted?
Sorry.
Has the pace shifted? Has the pace shifted? I think it's still not in the last one. In the previous one, the slides.
Yep. Yeah, it is. Can you see it? Okay, so I think, look, what we wanted to highlight here is that just incredible with the backdrop of what's happening with COVID, the pandemic. Last night, Lisa Gussie, co-founder of Arbor Ventures, mentioned how she was speaking with one of her portfolio companies in New York, sort of late January, and how she was talking to them about cutting expenses, and because of the uncertainty of COVID. But really, at that stage, she really felt like it was an Asia issue. But we forget today that by January, we were going into lockdown here in Asia, in parts of Asia, or planning for it. So given the situation, what we watched very closely, we watched super closely the equity funding month on month that was going into fintechs. And the first 3 months of the year, there was a real drop in equity funding. But once April, when things were really clear from governments and how it was all playing out in Asia, we started to see investors' activity returned in a big way. So I think that's really something that we wanted to highlight, especially from January to June, as we see the equity funding was just over $500 million Singapore dollars, 32% higher than 2019, and 2019 was a record year not only in Singapore but also globally. So, as well, interesting to note, those fintechs that are attracting funding, you're seeing here that small business enterprise and retail banking fintechs are really attracting the majority of the funding, the share of the funding. And if we could go to the next page as well. I'd like to note, what level of maturity are we funding, especially in the last 3 months. So the total of funding of deals have decreased, but the average size has increased from mid-stage to Series C, with investors really rallying against really backing fintechs to accelerate that growth, as the demands for digital solutions, not only for consumers but also for businesses, really skyrockets. So here, scale up can be, we speak to fintechs day in and day out, and scale up can be a real vulnerable phase, and investors' confidence in fintech shows that they are part of the recovery. And I think as well to note, Sopnendu, here, the 5 years, as I mentioned at the start of this session, the MAS has really been implementing a number of policies and initiatives to really help and promote the development of fintech in the region. And you start seeing that initially, we're funding ideas, seed, early stage, but now as time goes by, we're seeing the maturity of that investment into fintechs that are ready for scale up. So how have we accomplished this in the last 5 years? We have three pillars. I keep on saying killers, 3 pillars. One is nurturing that fintech ecosystem, and we wanted to take the time to really speak about some of the heroes that we have here in Singapore, and there are a number of them, both from the regulator, but professional services, fintechs themselves, investors, really helping to promote the fintech ecosystem, cultivate talent, and build that enabling infrastructure, which Sopnendu will talk to us about a little bit more. So Singapore here, what we're seeing as well is an interesting development in Singapore. I think Singapore is known for sort of the home of enabling fintechs. Not a lot of disruptions happening here, but what we see here funded, and I think it's a really interesting point, is that we're funding enabling disruptions. Take, for example, somebody like a funding societies, an online lending marketplace for SMEs. So what they're doing really is that they refer borrowers who have completed 2 successful rounds of funding to their their banking partner for larger commercial loans, and also other financial services like potentially insurance. In return, the partner bank refers some of these smaller businesses that the bank is unable to lend to funding societies. So as fintechs in the region get more sophisticated, they get access to a variety of revenue streams, not just through competing with banks or super apps, which we have a few here in the region in Southeast Asia, but also partnering with them. Okay, we can go to the next piece. Thank you. Another interesting development that we were really keen to highlight here is the digital licensing regimes that are gaining momentum amongst regulators in the region. So in countries relatively with low banking penetration but well-supported internet infrastructure, we're starting to see a number of these, including Singapore, which is a highly penetrated country. But when we see, some of the early adopters and the impact it's had on competition, but also in terms of financial services and banking services, China really significantly improved banking penetration since 2011. Great, thank you. So now I just wanted to leave you as well and have a little bit of a discussion, Sopnendu, on some, what's happening next. What are the next, not so much the next 5 years, but as we've really, we're shown that we've reached a number of maturity within the fintech ecosystem here in Singapore, and that's really proven by the investment and also the business model of fintechs that we have in Singapore. What are we seeing? How is the private and public sector working together, coming together to continue to accelerate that development?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I think the numbers are quite telling in many sense. It explains the ecosystem, not only Singapore. It explains the broader Asia, how it looks like. And if I'm going to go back to some of those numbers in the slides, I don't know if it's refreshing, but anyway, it is in my head now. So if you look at the Asian fintech ecosystem, definitely we are in a period of almost like a two-stage period. There are China, India, which is quite ahead in terms of B2C fintech market, quite well developed and super scaled. But there's a huge market with the ASEAN market, which is growing last 5 years. And that market is interesting, which I'm going to talk today. Why that is unique for the founders and investors, that's something to look beyond India and China. And let's examine why that market is exciting and why that will be exciting for the next 2-3 years. Unlike large market with large population, where there was a huge financial infrastructure gap, fintechs have moved in. They provide remarkable services, whether to lending or payment services or e-commerce, and it has grown substantially. And that's the right direction which I think the market took. But in the ASEAN market, it's quite interesting because while there's more than 500 million people out in this market, there's a definite shift that the companies here, the banks here, have taken a different path. They want to digitize themselves. They want to be like fintech, and they want to adopt some of the best practices what fintechs are demonstrating in their own DNA. So what you see in the ASEAN market will be further collaboration between the fintechs and the bank. Now, if you take this out of the 10 market, 6 markets are issuing some form of digital bank licenses. And if I do a rough count, it's around 20 licenses going to be dispensed in this year. And if you imagine that these 20 licenses are going to spend tech money, and I'll put a bet of somewhere around $20 to $25 billion of tech spend is going to come through this new licensed bank as they build the infrastructure. Now, here is the catch. Unlike the incumbent banks and the previous institution, they're not going to run to an IBM to build a system. They're not going to a large tech provider to build a system. They're going to go to them, but they're going to go to them to build the core banking product at best. But almost 50 to 70% of their tech services will be a microservice based. And they're going to look out for B2B fintechs to plug into their systems. And that's, to me, a huge opportunity for fintechs who are in the business of helping banks to digitize or helping anyone to digitize. So that's point number one, that the Asian growth in next 2 to 3 years, because of this, on back of this licenses, we will see a further and further growth of B2B fintechs going and plugging with this new bank licenses. And I think that's the opportunity to look for. The second characteristics of the Asian market will be that it is going to, the policymakers are largely going to play a very proactive role here. And the last slide, where in your slide, we talk about the 3 things, and which I think is quite different from other market. You will see a lot of money is being spent, and a lot of focus is there on the building the foundational infrastructure, because unlike in many large market where the fintechs have also invested on building the core infrastructure, if you come to Singapore and you go into some of the ASEAN market in next 5 to 10 years, you will find the core infrastructures out there. They have a national ID system. They will have a national data system, which is trusted. You will have a payment infrastructure, which can be leveraged for moving money. So the core foundational rails will be out there. So what fintechs have to focus is build an apps on top of it. I think that's one core difference in this market. The second one will be that the SMEs, which are the backbone of this of the ASEAN economy, will start digitizing very rapidly. And we have seen this trend in during the COVID-19 crisis, and through the crisis, you can see there's a huge uptake by the SMEs to digitize their own requirement. In fact, there's a survey out there by UOB and I think UOB and Dun and Bradstreet, and they surveyed 1,000 SMEs of an annual revenue of $20 million, and 9 out of 10 expressed the desire to digitize their services, at least plug into some form of financial services, which is delivered through cloud, accounting services, straight through processing, and they want to work with a bank which is highly digitized. So there will be this massive surge by the SMEs to start adopting from the fintech solutions as they plug into the financial market. And same time, most of the SMEs did express the concern that they will see a dip in the revenue. So they'll be looking to reduce some of the cost, digitize more. So that's the second bucket of huge growth in terms of fintechs playing a significant role in this market. And the last piece, which I think is interesting in the ASEAN market, will be that we talked about that people go to a market and they try to discover what that can be done. But in Asia, and especially in Singapore, we have launched a product called API Exchange, where you don't have to do that. You can put a product out there, you can talk to a client, do some POCs, discover what you can offer, and through that API Exchange partnership, a lot of this new product can be brought to this market faster than the normal process of getting your product into a new market. So the market access has become far more easier due to these public platforms like API Exchange, which allows a greater integration, easier integration, better discovery of product match with the other side of who's going to use these products. So having a public infrastructure on top of a growing demand from the SMEs, from the banks to digitize will be a great opportunity for many fintechs who are in the B2B space or B2B2C space to come to this market and grow.
And just a quick one on Apex, Sopnendu. So Apex itself is a B2B and about three years old right now. And I think what you're saying as well is that you're seeing a lot more activity coming to Apex, not only onboarding fintechs on one side, but onboarding as well banks who look to solutions to help accelerate that digitization. So I think
Yes, absolutely.
from an infrastructure perspective, you're 3 years ahead already.
I think I would say that that was a necessity in the because it's a very complex market, is a highly diverse market. Which is almost a necessity to have this kind of platform. Remember, if you take ASEAN market 5 years back, it is highly underdeveloped market. The infrastructures were highly legacy-based systems. It was not up to the mark. The capacity was not there. So this infrastructure was built to upgrade that capacity. But it turned out to be, during COVID-19, we discovered that this platform also helps to accelerate that process of digitization. So it's like we discovered during this crisis that this can play that role of discovery, deploy, and commercialize faster.
Fantastic. Thanks. Is there a word you'd like to say about borders and business? Because I think that's another part of the infrastructure that is less known, I would say. But it's also an initiative that's really important, and I think it's also very quickly taking shape, not only just in Singapore, but also in the region, with a lot of those ecosystem players building and pushing from India to Myanmar to the Philippines, involvement with the local markets.
Maybe let me start with the number. Given I'm presuming the crowd who is watching this are primarily investors and founders. As I was speaking, that large part of the COVID-19 recovery will be the SME digitizing and deploying their services on a low-touch, high-tech construct. And these companies are going to consume a lot of these digital services as we speak. Now having a platform like the Business Sans Border, which will be called Proxtera very soon, allows this SMEs, when they find a good match with whom they want to trade, a whole set of services to be digitized and provided to them in a straight-through manner. And let me explain an example. In this platform, an SME goes there, register themselves, they offer their product and services, and they find a match who can be a supplier or a buyer of their services. When they do this match, few things happens. They need to move the product. They need a logistic company. They need to clear customs. They need to work with a custom clearing agent. They need to do a certification of the goods. They need a certification services. They need to access finance. They need a finance access to short-term lending. Now, all this today, in my mind, are a typical opportunity for a B2B fintech to play. And they can find an integrated way to provide the service. And as these matches are happening in this platform, at the point of match, you can see on the screen the whole set of fintechs offering you services to digitize this trade end-to-end, with all the services are articulated in between as a straight-through plugin. Now, that's what we intend to do. Now, we all know the 80% of our market is SME-driven. If there's a chance of recovery, they will have to get back into the business. And for them to get back to business, it has to be the digital way, because social distancing and the constraints will stay for a few years from now. Having that constraints around, having a digital platform like Business Sans Border allows a lot of the digital play to come together and provide that ecosystem for trades to happen seamlessly. And this is another platform by which a lot of these fintechs can play a proactive plugins into this trade, which otherwise would have been difficult because the market is inefficient in discovering who can provide what services. This is a public good platform, and you are out there, you can be discovered by a simple search on these platforms. So that's what the Business Sans Border expects to do. We are expecting the first pilot production to go end of this year. Hopefully that becomes a part of this puzzle of growing this market in Asia, or the ASEAN in particular, for post-COVID-19 recovery. I think that's, and in fact, if you go back to your slides on the last 6 months number, if as you articulated, from March to at the edge of the COVID-19, from March to May, 200% growth in fintechs who are serving the SME market.
Yeah,
I think that's a clear
indication
that
Thanks.
Yeah, that clearly indicates where the money is flowing. So if any founders or any investors, if they have to look for new opportunity, the golden rule in Asia has to be that: are you serving the SME market? Do you have the capacity and capability to collaborate with a bank who is working with an SME? Do you have a service which integrates with the other non-financial services, from logistic, accounting, custom clearing, and whole other services? So if you don't have a wider picture than what you are plugging in, it will be hard to penetrate to this market. Anybody with a broader construct will have a higher chance of success in this market.
Great, fantastic. No, that's good to know. So what we're saying is, come to Asia, come and help us support SMEs and the development and the enabling disruption that's happening here. So I think that's really interesting as well to note. And I just want to quote. So one of the ecosystem pieces that we've been doing here in Singapore over the last 3 months is Green Shoots by the Singapore Fintech Festival. And in our first session, I just wanted to know something that Melissa Ghazi also said, is that she said that there's a future, it's bright future, and there are going to be business models that won't be relevant when we come out of it, into the new world. But what we'll see is that there are opportunities that are going to emerge, and VCs are backing them. And that's really, I mean, that was the 3rd of April, and it's really what we've seen in April and March and June so far. And speaking with the ecosystem here in the region, with a number of the founders, we're already seeing them. They've already talked about some funding rounds that we'll be seeing in August and in September, predominantly again in the SME space. So those fintechs supporting the SME space, fintechs developing AI solutions to help with the scale up, and also regtechs. So a number of those in Singapore will be looking to be raising some funding to really be in a position to answer a lot of the demand that's happening right now due to COVID. So I think that takes, yep. Please, Sopnendu.
Yes. No, I was saying that during COVID-19, one of the interesting event happened is this in the Apex platform, that we launched all the global hackathons out of Apex platform. And it was a discovery happened during this crisis, because people were missing these hackathons where fintech used to go and showcase their product. And we did launched one of the most complex and the largest RegTech SupTech hackathon in this called the G20 Tech Sprint. And I want to share to your audience here that during it's quite a strange thing, because as the crisis came in, you expect banks and financial institutions to start looking for solutions as they're grappling with the ability to serve customer remotely. And you would expect a lot of those hackathons, if at all happens on a digital platform, are going to be the FIs themselves. But guess what? The segment or who went in a big way to launch a hackathon are the regulators. They were looking for solutions to regulate smarter in a remote way during this crisis. And that's the reason why this G20 Tech Sprint happened. And to me, that's a double-digit billion-dollar market. And we saw close to 30 countries participating, around 130 odd RegTech and SupTech companies are coming to this space, and they're trying to compete to find a way to help central banks and the compliance organization of these banks to digitize the services. So that definitely makes this market far more interesting, especially where central banks are proactive, they're quite progressive, and they're looking at tools to manage this market more efficiently in the digital construct. So that's another piece of good opportunity for fintech specializing on compliance, RegTech, SupTech space.
Yeah, and I echo that as well, as we've been talking to a number of regulators globally, everywhere from Australia to Canada. A number of these regulators are starting to hire chief data officers to really move into a more analytical world and use more of these RegTech and SupTech tools themselves. So I think we're very closely running out of time. Sopnendu, are there any messages you want to leave us? But first, I've been asked a lot about the next Singapore FinTech Festival. What are we gonna? How are we gonna fit 60,000 people in our screens? What do you have planned for us? Anything you can share?
We have an exciting plan. I think we're going to go bigger. Let me tell you, if that's bigger means a lot of people on the online, answer is no. The bigger could be a hybrid model we're looking at, but I promise to the audience here, it will be exciting, it will be fun, and it will have the elements of physical connections as we, and I don't want to front run my announcement, but we'll be soon seeing in the press how it will look like. But that will be exciting. But let me summarize for the audience here what you want to take away if you're looking for your next investment or your next ideas to be deployed, because people will not recollect what we spoke for next half an hour. First thing, Asia is putting up a lot of new digital bank licenses, and I just counted 20, and it's going to come more. So let's assume there are 25, 30 new licenses being issued. These are digital bank licenses, and these banks are going to be completely digital. They have to deploy a lot of tech solutions, and this is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity to go and work with these banks. And I would strongly recommend fintech's founders, investors who are invested on fintech, go proactively, reach out to this new set of consortiums who are applying for licenses, find a way to work with them. You have money out there to be made, compete against traditional incumbent tech provider. I think the Asian disruption is not disrupting banks. It will be disrupting traditional tech provider. That's one big piece. Second big piece is that SMEs. SMEs are the backbone of this ASEAN market, including beyond ASEAN too. A lot of these SMEs are going to go straight through financial services, and they would require a lot of supporting tech services as they think about growing their own economic aspiration using digital platform. So SMEs, to me, is the second big bucket. If you have a great solution, either to how to finance them, how to automate them, how to create data services for them, go for it. They are going to work hard. They're going to make it big. And the third piece is that keep in mind, when you come to ASEAN market, you must expect the regulators are highly engaged. They're going to work with you to make you successful if you have good product and services. So the regulators in ASEAN markets are extremely friendly, and they're very proactive. They're going to support your ideas if it is good to serve their community. And regulators and policymakers are working very hard in this market to provide foundational infrastructure, to provide public good, which will facilitate, make your life easier as you deploy the solution. The holy grail of a true sustainable financial services, where you can bring the public infrastructure, the private product and services, and the consumer to the same platform. And my sense is that the ASEAN market is going to shift from productivity and efficiency madness to sustainability and resilience structures. So if you have a focus on green, fintech, green tech, that also plays well in this market. So keep this in mind. ASEAN market is going to grow. It's going to grow at a faster rate than ever. The numbers are showing, in spite of COVID-19, the numbers are still holding on, and they're going to grow bigger as we go into the recovery part of COVID-19.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. That's been a really fun session. I hope you enjoy. We still have a few sessions here in Asia that are worth watching. And thank you, Treasury. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.